The man dying on the floor was my son's father. And my son had no idea. He was doing chest compressions on a stranger. Except it wasn't a stranger. It was the billionaire who told me to get rid of our baby 27 years ago. The same baby who was now trying to restart his heart. Clear. The defibrillator charged. His body jolted. Nothing. Again. Clear. The richest man in New York was dying in a designer tuxedo while champagne dripped off the marble stairs. My son, the trauma doctor, was the only one who could save him. And when the billionaire's eyes finally opened, he looked up at the young man's face and whispered one word. My name. That's when my son turned around. That's when he saw me standing there. That's when I realized the secret I buried for nearly 3 decades was about to detonate in front of 500 people. Here's the problem. My son is a good man. He saves lives because that's who he is. But what happens when the life you save belongs to the father who didn't want you to exist? What happens when the man you resuscitate is the reason your mother cried herself to sleep for years? And what do you do when he looks at you, recognizes his own face staring back, and says the word you've waited your whole life to hear? So, this is the story of 3 heartbeats. One that stopped, one that saved it, and one that's been broken since the night a check was placed on a kitchen table with the words, "This is the cleanest way to end this." Stick with me, because what happened after that hospital room confrontation will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about forgiveness. But first, let me take you back, 27 years back, to the night everything fell apart. I was 24 years old, Natalie Cross, working 2 jobs to put myself through a teaching certification program. I met Dominic Ashford at a fundraiser I was catering. He wasn't supposed to notice me. I was refilling champagne glasses. He was giving a speech about philanthropy to a room full of people who measured their worth in stock portfolios. But he didn't notice me. He walked right up to me after his speech, smiled that devastating smile, and said something I'll never forget. "You're the only person in this room who looks like they'd rather be anywhere else." I laughed. "Is it that obvious?" "Refreshingly so," he said. "I'm Dominique." "I know who you are," I replied. "Everyone knows who you are." "Then you have me at a disadvantage," he said, "because I don't know your name. And I'd very much like to." That was how it started. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into weekends. Weekends turned into me believing that maybe, just maybe, love didn't care about tax brackets. For 6 months, I lived in a dream. Dominic made me feel seen, heard, valued. He talked about breaking away from his father's expectations, about building something meaningful beyond Ashford Global Enterprises, about a future that didn't involve board meetings and merger negotiations. I believed him. God, I believed every word. Then I got pregnant. I remember exactly where I was when I saw those 2 lines. My tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn, rain tapping against the window, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold a test. I wasn't scared. Not at first. I was nervous, sure, but I genuinely thought we'd figure it out together. I called him that night. "Dominic, I need to see you. It's important." There was a pause. "Is everything all right? Just come over. Please." He arrived an hour later. I was sitting on the couch, the pregnancy test wrapped in tissue paper on the coffee table. He walked in, saw my face, and I watched something shift in his expression. "What's wrong?" he asked carefully. I handed him the test. He stared at it for what felt like an eternity. Then he sat down, put his head in his hands, and said 4 words that changed my entire life. "This can't be happening. Not we'll figure it out. Not I'm here for you. This can't be happening." "Dominic," I said quietly, "I know this is unexpected, but we can work through this." He looked up at me. His eyes were different, colder, like a wall had gone up between us in seconds. "Natalie, you don't understand the position this puts me in." "The position?" I repeated. "Dominic, we're talking about a baby. Our baby. My father will never accept this," he said. "You have to understand. Ashford Global is everything. My entire life has been built around taking over that company. If I tell him I got a waitress pregnant, a waitress," the word stung. "Is that what I am to you?" "That's not what I meant," he said quickly. "But that's how he'll see it. That's how the board will see it. That's how everyone will see it." I felt something inside me crack. "So what are you saying?" He reached into his jacket, pulled out his checkbook, started writing. I watched in disbelief as he tore the check out and placed it on the table between us. $52,000. This should cover everything, he said. Medical expenses. Whatever you need after. I'll have my lawyer draw up an NDA. This stays between us. I stared at that check. At the man I thought I loved. At the future I thought we'd have. You want me to get rid of our baby? I said slowly. So your father doesn't get upset. Natalie, be reasonable. Reasonable? My voice broke. I'm pregnant with your child, and you're handing me a check like I'm a problem you can pay to go away. That's not fair, he said. Fair. I stood up. You want to talk about fair? I fell in love with you, Dominic. I believed you when you said you were different, that you wanted something real. I do care about you, he said, but I have responsibilities, obligations. You knew who I was when we started this. I knew who you pretended to be, I said. Clearly, I was wrong. He stood up too, straightened his jacket. The wall between us, now a fortress. I'll have my assistant contact you about the arrangements, he said. Please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. And then he walked out, just like that. 6 months of my life. A baby growing inside me. And he walked out like I was a business transaction gone wrong. I didn't take the money. I ripped that check into pieces and threw it in the trash. 3 days later, his assistant called. A woman with a voice like sharpened ice. Miss Cross, Mr. Ashford would like to confirm that the matter has been resolved. Tell Mr. Ashford, I said, that he doesn't get to know. Not now. Not ever. I hung up. I never heard from him again. For months, I waited for him to show up, to prove that somewhere beneath the cowardice was the man I'd fallen for. He never did. I worked through my entire pregnancy. Morning sickness between catering gigs. Swollen ankles during double shifts. I moved into an even smaller apartment to save money. I asked for nothing, expected nothing. And when Elias was born, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with his father's sharp jawline and dark eyes, I made myself a promise. I would raise him to be everything Dominic wasn't. Brave, honest, someone who didn't measure a person's worth by their bank account. Elias asked about his father exactly once. He was 8 years old. We were making breakfast. Pancakes, I think. He looked up at me with those serious eyes and said, Mom, why don't I have a dad? I knelt down, so we were eye level. You do have a father, I said carefully, but he wasn't ready to be a dad. That's not your fault. That's his. Did he not want me? Elias asked. That question nearly destroyed me. Baby, I said, pulling him close. You're wanted. So wanted. By me. Every single day. He never asked again. But I saw it sometimes. In the way he watched other kids with their fathers at school events. In the way he overachieved at everything like he was trying to prove something to someone who wasn't even watching. Elias threw himself into school. Then medical school. Top of every class. Scholarships. Awards. At 27, he became one of the youngest trauma physicians at Mercy Grace Medical Center. He told me once why he chose emergency medicine. I like being the person who shows up when everything's falling apart, he said. I like knowing I can help even when things seem hopeless. I knew what he really meant. He became the person who stayed. Because his father was the person who left. If you've ever been abandoned by someone who was supposed to love you, or if you've ever had to be strong for someone else when you were barely holding it together yourself, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your story. And if you're finding something real in this, go ahead and hit that like button. Now, fast forward 27 years. December 23rd. New York City covered in snow and Christmas lights. Dominic Ashford was preparing for his annual Christmas gala. The event of the season. 500 guests. Politicians. CEOs. People whose names appeared on hospital wings and museum plaques. The Ashford Industries Winter Gala was where power came to see and be seen. And I was going to be there. Not as a guest. As staff. I was now the director of the Metropolitan Community Health Initiative, a nonprofit providing healthcare access to underserved communities. That year, Dominic's company had made a sizable donation. A tax write-off dressed up as generosity. And, as part of the publicity, our medical team was invited to set up a small informational presence at the gala. When I saw the invitation, my hands went numb. 27 years. I hadn't seen Dominic Ashford in 27 years. I could have sent someone else. Should have, probably. But something in me needed to see him. Not for closure. Not for confrontation. Just to see if the man who haunted my son's absence even remembered my face. Elias was assigned to the event too. Protocol required a medical team on standby for gatherings that large. He'd be in the service area, behind the scenes, checking equipment. Standard procedure. He had no idea Dominic Ashford was his father. He knew the last name, obviously. Everyone did. But I'd never connected the dots for him. Never said, the billionaire on the cover of Forbes is the man who handed me a check and told me to disappear. I told myself it was to protect him. Maybe I was protecting myself. The Canterbury Hotel ballroom looked like something out of a snow globe. Crystal chandeliers. Ice sculptures. A 12-foot Christmas tree covered in gold ornaments. String quartet playing in the corner. Women in gowns that cost more than my monthly rent. Men in custom tuxedos holding drinks that cost more than groceries. I stood near the back in a simple black dress. Invisible. Exactly where people like me were supposed to be. Then I saw him. Dominic Ashford. 52 years old now. Silver hair. Tailored suit. Commanding presence. He stood at the top of the marble staircase, smiling for the cameras, his hand resting on the waist of a woman young enough to be his daughter. Victoria Hastings. His fiancée. I'd read about her in the society pages. 29. Former model. Perfect teeth. Empty eyes. He looked happy. Successful. Untouched by consequence. And something inside me burned. I watched him move through the crowd. Shaking hands. Laughing at jokes that probably weren't funny. He looked so comfortable in his world of wealth and power. Like the past was something that happened to someone else. Then the orchestra began playing Silent Night. The room quieted. Dominic raised a champagne glass. The spotlight found him. Cameras turned. Everyone waited for his annual speech about gratitude and giving back and all the things rich people say when they want to feel noble. He opened his mouth to speak, then stopped. His face changed. The color drained from his skin like someone had pulled a plug. His hand went to his chest. The champagne glass slipped from his fingers. It fell in slow motion, crystal shattering against marble. The sound cut through the music like a gunshot. For one impossible second, nobody moved. Then Dominic collapsed. His body hit the stairs hard. People screamed. Women stumbled backward. Men froze. Victoria shrieked his name, but didn't move toward him. She just stood there, hand over her mouth, useless. Security rushed forward, but had no idea what to do. The most powerful people in New York stood in a circle around a dying man, and not one of them knew how to save him. Then I heard a voice from the service corridor. My son's voice. Move. I'm a doctor. Everyone stepped back. Elias pushed through the crowd. He dropped to his knees beside Dominic without hesitation. His hands went to Dominic's neck, checking for a pulse. No pulse, Elias said. His voice was calm, professional. Someone get the AED. Now. He positioned his hands on Dominic's chest and started compressions. Fast. Hard. Counting under his breath. Someone ran for the defibrillator. The crowd pressed closer. Phones came out. Videos started recording. And I stood there frozen, watching my son fight to save the man who'd abandoned him before he was born. Elias didn't know. He was just doing what he always did. Saving people. Being the kind of man who runs toward emergencies instead of away from them. Someone brought the defibrillator. Elias tore open Dominic's shirt, placed the pads on his chest, charged the device. Clear, he said. Dominic's body jolted. The monitor showed nothing. Elias didn't hesitate. More compressions. Sweat on his forehead. Jaw tight with concentration. Come on, he muttered. Come on. He charged the defibrillator again. Clear. Another jolt. This time the monitor beeped. Weak. Irregular. But there. A pulse. The room exhaled collectively. Elias leaned close. Checked Dominic's pupils. Made sure his airway was clear. He was so focused he didn't notice what I saw from across the room. The chandelier light caught Elias's face at the perfect angle. His strong brow. The sharp line of his jaw. The way his dark hair fell across his forehead. It was Dominic's face. 27 years younger, but unmistakable. And then Dominic's eyes opened. Just for a second. Unfocused. Scared. He stared up at Elias like he was seeing something impossible. His lips moved. Barely a whisper. but I heard it. Natalie. Elias froze. He looked down at the man he'd just saved. Then slowly, like he could feel my presence, he turned his head. Our eyes met across the ballroom. I saw the question forming on his face. Mom? The paramedics arrived. They loaded Dominic onto a stretcher. Elias stood up, his doctor's coat stained, his hands still shaking slightly from the adrenaline. He walked toward me through the crowd. Mom, he said quietly. Do you know him? I opened my mouth. Closed it. 27 years of secrets sat between us. We need to talk, I said. But not here. The ambulance took Dominic to Mercy Grace Medical Center, the same hospital where Elias worked. The same hospital where, hours later, Dominic would wake up from emergency surgery to find his past waiting at his bedside. I need to pause here because what I'm about to tell you gets complicated. If you've ever had to tell someone a truth you've been hiding for years, you know that feeling. That moment when you realize the secret you kept to protect them might be the thing that hurts the most. If you've been there, drop a comment. And if this story is resonating with you, share it. Someone in your life needs to hear this. Dominic survived the surgery. Cardiac arrest caused by severe arrhythmia. They stabilized him, put in a pacemaker, told him he was lucky to be alive. But when he woke up in that hospital room, luck was the last thing he felt. Because Elias and I were standing there, waiting. Dominic's eyes opened slowly. He looked confused at first. Then he saw me, really saw me. And I watched 27 years of recognition wash over his face. Natalie, he whispered. Hello, Dominic, I said. His eyes moved to Elias, standing beside me in his white coat. Arms crossed, face unreadable. Dominic stared and stared. I saw the moment it clicked. The resemblance he couldn't ignore. The timeline he couldn't deny. The truth he'd spent nearly 3 decades avoiding. No, Dominic said. His voice cracked. It can't be. It is, I said simply. Elias stepped forward. You know who I am? Dominic couldn't speak. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The man who commanded boardrooms and closed billion-dollar deals had no words. Answer him, I said. I was told, Dominic finally managed, that you terminated the pregnancy. The room went cold. Elias's jaw tightened. Told by who? I never confirmed, Dominic said quickly. I just assumed. I thought. You thought what was convenient. I cut in. You thought what let you sleep at night. I look for you, Dominic said. Years later. I try to find you. No, I said. My voice was steel. You looked when your first engagement fell apart. You looked when your father died, and you realized money didn't fill the empty spaces. You looked when guilt became uncomfortable. But you didn't look when I was pregnant and terrified and alone. Elias was staring at Dominic like he was solving an equation, putting pieces together. You're my father, he said. Not a question, a statement. Dominic's eyes filled with tears. Son, don't, Elias said sharply. Don't call me that. You don't earn that word just because your heart stopped beating. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Dominic flinched like he'd been struck. I deserve that, he whispered. You deserve a lot more than that, Elias said. But I'm a doctor, so I save your life anyway. You're welcome. He turned to leave. Elias, please, Dominic said. Elias stopped at the door. Didn't turn around. My mother worked 3 jobs to raise me, he said. She missed sleep, missed meals, sacrificed everything so I could have opportunities she never did. And you want to know the worst part? I turn out good anyway, despite you. And you'll never get credit for that. Then he walked out. I started to follow. Natalie, Dominic called. Please, just 5 minutes. I looked back at him. This powerful man reduced to begging from a hospital bed. You had 27 years, I said. You don't get 5 minutes now. For 3 days, Elias refused to go back. He treated his other patients, worked his shifts, acted like everything was normal. But I'm his mother. I knew. I saw it in the way he stared at nothing during his breaks. The way his hands gripped his coffee cup too tight. The way he avoided any conversation that got too close to feelings. He was hurting, not because he wanted a relationship with Dominic, but because even at 27, even as a successful doctor, even as a grown man, there was still a little boy inside him asking the question every abandoned child asks. Why wasn't I worth staying for? So on Christmas Eve, I made a decision. I brought him back to Dominic's room. Not for reconciliation. For truth. I don't want to do this, Elias said as we walked down the hall. I know, I said. But you need to hear what he has to say. Not for him. For you. Dominic was sitting up when we entered. He looked older. Tired. The machines around him beeping steadily. When he saw us, something like hope crossed his face. We sat down. The three of us. Decades of pain in one small room. I'm going to tell you everything, Dominic said. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know the truth. He told us about his father, Harrison Ashford, a man who measured worth in stock prices and legacy in buildings with a family name on them. How Harrison had controlled every aspect of Dominic's life since birth. The schools he attended, the people he associated with, the future he was allowed to want. When I told him about you, Dominic said, looking at me, he gave me an ultimatum. End it, or lose everything. The company, my inheritance, my name. So you chose the company, Elias said flatly. I chose cowardice, Dominic said. I told myself I had no choice. But that was a lie. I had a choice. I just made the wrong one. And the pregnancy? I asked. Dominic's face crumpled. My father's attorney told me you'd taken care of it. I never asked for proof. I never called. I just accepted it. Because it was easier. Easier, I repeated. I built an empire after that, Dominic said. Ashford Industries became the most successful tech conglomerate in the country. I made billions. I got everything my father wanted for me. He looked at Elias, and every single achievement felt empty, like I was building a monument to the worst decision I ever made. Elias said nothing. I don't expect you to understand, Dominic continued, or forgive me, but if there's anything I can do, anything at all, I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn even one conversation with you. Elias stared at him for a long moment. Then he spoke. Start with my mother. Dominic turned to me, tears streaming down his face now. I'm sorry, he said. Not because I lost you, but because I failed you when you needed me most. You deserved better. You deserved everything. And I gave you nothing. I looked at this man, the one who'd broken my heart, abandoned our child, built his life on the foundation of our erasure. And I saw not a monster, just a man who'd made terrible choices and finally understood the cost. I forgave you a long time ago, I said quietly. I had to, for my own peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean trust, and it doesn't mean you get a place in our lives. That will take time, maybe years, maybe never. I understand, Dominic said. Do you? Elias asked. Because you've had time before, and you wasted all of it. Dominic looked at the heart monitor beside his bed, at the machine keeping him alive. I'm not wasting any more, he said. Elias stood, walked to the window, looked out at the snow falling over the city. I saved your life because that's who I am, he said without turning around. Not because of who you are. And if you want any kind of relationship with me, you need to understand that difference. I do, Dominic said. Then prove it, Elias said. Not with money, not with promises, with action. Start by making things right with the woman who actually raised me. He looked at me, then back at Dominic. She's the parent in this room. Remember that. Outside the hospital window, Christmas lights twinkled across Manhattan. Snow covered the streets in white. Somewhere in the city, families were gathering, opening presents, creating memories. In that hospital room, we weren't a family. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But for the first time in 27 years, we were honest. And sometimes, that's where healing begins. Let me tell you what I learned from this. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. You can forgive someone for your own peace without giving them access to your life. Forgiveness is about releasing your pain. Reconciliation is about rebuilding trust. One is a gift you give yourself. The other has to be earned.